The desert heat shimmered over the cracked asphalt, blurring the horizon into a wavering mirage of light. The gas station stood alone, a weary relic with peeling paint, a flickering, open sign, and two pumps that looked older than most of the cars that stopped there. Inside, the air conditioner hummed weakly, doing its best to fight the relentless sun. The scent of gasoline mixed with hot rubber and the faint sweetness of the dust that clung to everything in sight. The woman inside the station didn't seem to notice the heat. She moved with quiet efficiency, calm, controlled. Her posture was relaxed, but there was a precision to her movements that hinted at something deeper, something trained. Her name was Maya Rhodes, though she rarely introduced herself that way anymore. After 8 years in the Navy, most of them spent in places no one wanted to talk about, she'd learned that names didn't mean much, actions did. She'd stopped at the gas station only to fill up and grab a bottle of water for the last stretch of her drive. Her truck, a weathered black Tacoma, was parked at Pump 2, dust-caked but reliable. The rest of the lot was empty, save for an old sedan with its hood up and a tired-looking man tinkering with the engine. Maya didn't plan on staying more than 5 minutes. Then came the sound, a deep, throaty rumble that broke through the stillness like distant thunder. 3 motorcycles appeared on the highway, roaring toward the station. As they grew closer, the low growl of the engines turned into something physical. You could feel it in your chest. The men riding them looked exactly like the kind of trouble the desert seemed to attract. Sunburned, scarred, and dressed in leather that had seen better days. Patches covered their vests, skulls, flames, and the emblem of some outlaw club that probably didn't exist on paper. Maya glanced up once, saw them in the reflection of the glass door, and went back to the refrigerated aisle. She didn't need to look twice. She'd seen their kind in bars near every base she'd ever served at, loud, reckless, and convinced the world owed them attention. The bikers pulled in, engines still rumbling even after they'd stopped. One of them, tall and broad with a beard streaked in gray, swung off his bike and stretched like he owned the place. Another, younger and wiry with mirrored shades, lit a cigarette before his boots even touched the ground. The third just stood there grinning, eyes scanning the area like he was searching for something to amuse himself with. And then they spotted her. "Hey, look at that," the youngest said, elbowing his friend. "Didn't know they let cover models pump gas out here." Maya didn't turn. She grabbed a cold bottle of water from the cooler, shut the door quietly, and walked to the counter. The old cashier looked up nervously, not at her, but at the reflection of the men outside. He'd seen this kind of scene before. The door creaked open behind her, the heavy jingle of the bell breaking the quiet. Boots scraped against the floor. She could smell motor oil and tobacco before she heard the voice, deep, rough, mocking. "Well, ain't this something?" the gray-bearded one said. "A lady all by herself in the middle of nowhere. You lost, sweetheart." Maya placed her bottle on the counter, her expression unreadable. "No," she said evenly. That single word made the man pause. He'd expected hesitation, maybe fear, not that calm, unbothered tone. The younger one snickered. "Come on, man, maybe she's just shy. You in the military or something? Those pants look like they've seen a few drills." She didn't look at him. "Something like that." The older biker leaned on the counter beside her, invading her space. "Relax, we're just being friendly," he said, flashing a grin full of yellowed teeth. "Ain't every day we see a woman like you out here. You're far from base, aren't ya?" Maya's eyes flicked toward him, slow, deliberate. Her gaze met his with such quiet authority that he instinctively straightened, as if responding to an order. Then she turned back to the cashier, paid for her water, and said, "Keep the change." As she pushed the door open to leave, the younger one muttered under his breath, "Guess she's too good to talk to us." Outside, the heat hit her again like a wall. She didn't look back. The sun glinted off the chrome of her truck as she approached it. Behind her, laughter echoed, the kind that came from men who thought they were untouchable. They had no idea that the quiet woman they were mocking had once led men twice their size into combat, that she'd spent years mastering how to move silently, strike fast, and disappear before anyone knew what hit them. To them, she was just another pretty face at a lonely gas station. To Maya, they were just noise, background static in a life built on focus and control. But as their laughter followed her to the pump, something in her posture shifted ever so slightly, not fear, not anger. Just readiness. The air outside was thick with heat and exhaust as Maya stepped toward her truck, twisting off the cap on her water bottle. The sun was starting to dip lower now, painting the sky in slow, golden streaks that bled into the dust. She didn't look back. Years of training had drilled that instinct into her. Never give an aggressor the satisfaction of reaction. But she could still hear them behind her. The scrape of boots, the sound of a lighter flicking, the faint laughter that came with arrogance. She set the bottle on the hood of her truck and reached for the pump handle. That's when she heard the crunch of gravel behind her, heavy, deliberate footsteps. "Well now," a voice drawled. "You're really not gonna say a word to us, huh?" Maya exhaled slowly, her hand resting on the pump. The reflection in her truck's window showed him approaching, the tall, gray-bearded one. The other two followed close behind, all swagger and noise. The youngest, the one with the mirrored shades, kicked at the dirt with the heel of his boot, grinning. She didn't turn. "You're blocking the pump." That single, measured sentence landed like a quiet warning. The big man chuckled, clearly mistaking composure for fear. "We just wanna talk," he said, stepping closer. "Ain't every day we meet someone like you out here. What's your name, sweetheart?" Maya capped her water and placed it in the truck's cup holder. "Not your business." The younger one snorted. "She's feisty, huh? Probably thinks she's tough." He looked over at his buddies. "You think she's one of them cops or something?" That got a laugh out of all three. They closed in slightly, forming a loose half-circle around her. It wasn't an outright threat, not yet, but the intent was clear. They wanted a reaction. Maya finally turned, slowly, calmly. Her eyes swept across them, not hurried, not defensive. Just assessing. The way a surgeon studies a chart before an incision. "Last chance," she said softly. "Move." Her tone didn't rise. It didn't need to. But the words carried something they couldn't quite name, something that hit deeper than volume ever could. The older biker hesitated for the first time, just a flicker in his expression. Then pride reared up again, too loud to ignore. "Listen, lady," he said, his smirk returning, "you don't talk to me like that. You think you're tough. I've been through worse than." He reached out, fingers brushing her sleeve. He didn't even finish the sentence. In less than a second, her hand moved, a blur. She caught his wrist, twisted, and dropped her weight. The sound was sharp, a clean pop of joints shifting where they shouldn't. He grunted and hit his knees, stunned more by the speed than the pain. The second biker lunged before he could think, pure instinct driving him forward. Maya pivoted, stepped aside, and his momentum carried him right past her. She grabbed his jacket, guided him downward, and he landed flat on his chest with a thud that kicked up a puff of dust. Silence. For a moment, all anyone could hear was the groan of the man on the ground and the slow tick of cooling motorcycle engines. The youngest one froze. His grin vanished, replaced by the kind of blank stare that only comes from realizing the game has changed. He looked from his friends to Maya, then at her necklace, a simple chain, but at the end of it, glinting faintly in the sunlight, was a golden trident pin. The seal insignia. He'd seen it before, on news reports, on documentaries about special forces. He took a half step back. Yes, Maya said quietly. "Now get your friend up." The older biker staggered to his feet, clutching his wrist. His face was red with a mix of pain and humiliation. "You broke my dam. It's just dislocated," she said, already turning back to her truck. "Ice it within the hour." The leader stood there, chest heaving, torn between anger and disbelief. "Who the hell are you?" he finally managed. She opened her door, paused for just a moment, and looked back over her shoulder. Her expression was calm again, the storm already gone. Someone who knows how to end fights before they start. Her engine rumbled to life. The bikers stood in silence, the dust curling around their boots as the truck pulled away. The sound of gravel under her tires faded into the desert distance. It took a full minute before any of them spoke. "Man," the youngest muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. "We just picked a fight with a Navy SEAL." The older one shot him a glare but didn't reply. His pride was bruised, his wrist ached, and deep down, he knew she could have done far worse. Inside her truck, Maya allowed herself one slow breath, her fingers steady on the wheel. It wasn't anger she felt, just a sharp, clean focus. Encounters like that didn't rattle her, they reminded her. The world was full of people who judged strength by volume and muscle, people who had no idea what quiet control could do. She glanced at the trident on her chain once, then tucked it beneath her shirt. Some symbols didn't need to be seen. Some warnings didn't need to be spoken. The low hum of the highway faded behind her as Maya's truck rolled to a stop at the next light. She glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the bikers following her, but there was nothing. Just the vast, open stretch of desert road and the orange glow of the setting sun melting into the horizon. The air shimmered with heat, and the first long shadows of dusk began to creep across the asphalt. She could have driven straight on, left the whole encounter behind like she'd left 100 others in far more dangerous places. But something tugged at her. Not guilt, exactly, but a faint ache of disappointment. She'd hoped her quiet would be enough, that they'd take the hint. Yet, people rarely did. That was the problem with bullies, they only understood consequences. When she finally pulled into a small roadside diner 20 miles later, she just wanted coffee. The kind that was strong enough to burn a hole through the morning fog, even though it wasn't morning anymore. She parked beside a dusty red pickup and stepped inside. The place smelled like bacon grease and old wood. A few truckers sat at the counter. A waitress hummed along to an old country song on the radio, and for the first time that day, Maya felt almost at ease. She ordered her coffee black and took a seat near the window. The world outside looked calm, golden, quiet, ordinary. She liked that kind of quiet. It didn't last. The rumble of engines broke the stillness again. 3 motorcycles pulled into the lot, slow and deliberate this time. The truckers turned to look. The waitress sighed softly, clearly not her first time dealing with trouble. Maya didn't move. She took a slow sip of her coffee and watched as the bikers dismounted. The leader still held his wrist stiffly, his face drawn tight with pain and pride. The youngest trailed behind, eyes wary, while the third, the quiet one with a long scar down his cheek, just looked tired. They entered together, the door chime giving a half-hearted ring. Conversations in the diner thinned out immediately. Maya could feel the shift in the air, the way the energy sharpened. The leader spotted her right away. "You," he said under his breath, voice low but sharp. He walked toward her table, his boots heavy against the worn floor. "You think you can just humiliate people and walk off like that?" Maya set down her cup, folded her hands neatly on the table, and met his gaze. "I didn't humiliate you. You did that yourself." The words landed harder than a punch. The man's jaw flexed, his pride flaring like a fuse. He leaned in, his face inches from hers. "You think you're better than us. That little stunt back there. That little stunt," she interrupted softly, "was me going easy." The diner went completely still. Even the radio seemed to pause between songs. For a moment, it looked like he might explode, that raw, unfiltered rage that came from a bruised ego. But then something unexpected happened. The third biker, the quiet one, placed a hand on the leader's shoulder. "Let it go, man," he said, his voice steady. "She's right. You were out of line." The leader jerked his arm away. "You gonna take her side now?" "Yeah," the quiet one said simply. "Because she didn't hurt you half as bad as she could've." That silenced him. The leader stepped back, glaring between the two of them. Then he muttered something under his breath and turned toward the counter. "Fine. We'll gas up and go." Maya rose, left a few bills beside her half-finished cup, and headed for the door. As she passed the quiet one, he nodded once, a small, wordless sign of respect. She returned it with the faintest curve of a smile. Outside, the air had cooled. The wind had picked up, carrying the smell of sagebrush and rain somewhere in the distance. She walked back to her truck, opened the door, and paused. Behind her, the youngest biker called out, "Hey." She turned, one hand on the door. He hesitated, then said, "I didn't mean to laugh back there. I didn't know who you were." Maya shook her head. "Didn't matter who I was. Shouldn't take that to know how to act." He looked down, embarrassed, and she climbed into her truck. The engine came to life with a low growl. Before she pulled away, she glanced once more at the diner's reflection in the mirror, the 3 men standing quietly now, the bravado gone. As the road stretched ahead of her again, She felt that same peace she'd been chasing since leaving the service. Not the kind that came from silence, but the kind that came from knowing she still lived by her code. Out there, beyond the gas stations and dusty roads, people would keep making the same mistakes. Judging, underestimating, assuming. But she didn't need to correct them all. Just the ones who wouldn't learn otherwise. Behind her, the sun finally dipped below the desert line. In front of her, the highway stretched endlessly, a straight, narrow promise that she was still moving forward.